Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Westminster Chamber City Council Candidate Forum. I am Juliette Abdel, the President and CEO of the Westminster Chamber, and I will be moderating this session today. This is one of two forums that we're hosting. The second forum will be this Saturday, October the 12th at Westminster Grange from 10:30 to 11:30. Both these forums will have some sort of a video to follow up with afterwards so you can reflect on the candidate statements and make those informed decisions. I'll get started by introducing all of the candidates that are up here, and then providing them an opportunity to share an opening statement. I have Michelle Heaney, Lindsay Smith,
Anita Seitz, Bruce Baker, Sheila Mankey, Rich Seymour, Nick Dyer, and Patricia Moore. You may begin, Michelle.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everybody, and thank you for coming, even as early it is this morning. My name is Michelle Heaney. I've been a resident of Westminster for 26 years. I'm currently the president of Red Rocks Community College. As I said, I came to Westminster 26 years ago, and quite honestly, I've lived here longer than I've lived anywhere else in my life. I'm a military brat. I moved 15 times before I graduated from high school. So you can imagine it's wonderful to have a community to live in and to believe in. I am very interested in and continuing to be on City Council. I know we have a lot of challenges that we're going to be facing. But I truly believe that I have an opportunity to serve. I believe in serving a community. Early on, I learned what it was like to be a citizen. Thank you.
Good morning, and thank you for attending, and thank you for the Chamber for hosting. My name is Lindsay Smith, and I really began this race in 2017 when I wanted to make a difference in my community, the community that I grew up in. I benefited from Westminster's education and services, and we live in a great city, no doubt, but we can be doing better. We can be doing better by governing better, prioritizing your tax dollars towards what a city should be good at: public safety, the water infrastructure, affordable water, and taking care of our street infrastructure. My career is in public transportation, and I'm an alumni of the Westminster Citizens Police Academy. I'm also a Westminster Business Chamber member, and I volunteer at the court-appointed special advocate, making sure that we are being a voice for those that are most vulnerable in the foster care system. And I'm running not only because we need to plan for our future, but we need to focus on residents who live here now.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Anita, and I am the Mayor Pro Tem for the City of Westminster. I have had the honor and pleasure of serving this community for the last 5 years, and we have accomplished a lot over that time. In fact, over the last 5 years, the city's won over 100 awards, accreditations, and accolades for best practices in local government. I've been happy to be part of that team. I am running for re-election because I want to continue to work for our working families to make sure that everyone who lives in Westminster has an opportunity to earn a good life. I believe that it's our responsibility to make decisions that are sustainable. That means that we're looking at the long-term benefits of our local economy, our ability to provide services for our people and for our environment. I am asking for your vote and for your support because I think I've brought experience, ethics, integrity, and vision to the community. Thank you.
Well, and I'm Bruce Baker, and I'll go ahead without getting the nod. I am running because elections are important, vitally important. They are the way we hold our government accountable for the things we've done. And the current Council of Westminster has done some terrible things. They have flat out lied to the public. Last year during, the water crisis, they said that sewer usage on the Big Dry Creek Interceptor had gone up 40%, published in the Denver Post and the Westminster Window. It had gone up 5%. When you look at the comprehensive annual financial report, it had gone up 5%. We also had $100 million in cash and investments meet any need we had. Again, a misrepresentation of the public. We cannot have a council like that. I thought I was in 2 Westminsters when I drove here this morning, and I'll tell you about that later.
Thank you so much for attending this morning, and thank you to the Chamber for hosting this event. I'm Sheila Menke, and I have been worked for the last 16 years as a pediatrician in a nonprofit clinic. I believe health is not just about doctor's visits, but it's about community. It is about things such as public safety, clean air and water, parks and open spaces to play in, and a sense of belonging. I am also very interested in protecting our environment, and in 2016, I returned to get a master's degree in environmental health, looking mainly at the impact of climate change on health and how equitably our parks and open spaces are distributed in our city. In December, I applied and was appointed to Westminster City Council, where I have enjoyed further giving back to our community. I am running to make Westminster the healthiest city possible. I'm committed to attainable housing, especially for families and seniors, prioritizing our parks and open spaces, protecting our clean air and water, and making sure that everyone in our community feels like they have a voice. Thank you so much.
Good morning, I'm Rich Seymour, 28-year resident of Westminster. I have a unique perspective in Westminster as a business owner and employer. I'm one of the founding members of the Westminster Chamber of Commerce and very proud of that endeavor that we took on about 5.5 years ago. I serve on 5 community boards and have had the opportunity to coach youth baseball throughout our city, putting me in contact with parents and youth across Westminster, having an opportunity to enjoy those travels as we've moved across the city and seen it from north to south and east to west. I think the critical issue in this race is whether we want to be the next urban center of the Front Range, and I think it's important that you go to my website, richforwestminster.org, for other perspectives on that too. I'm Rich Seymour, and I want to thank you very much for being here this morning.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Nick Dyer. Thank you all for being here. I'm really excited to be here as well. Just like everyone up here, I want what's best for Westminster. I want to help lead this city through its next steps. A stigma in both kind of national elections, national politics, and also here on our local level is this stigma that I can't stand of if you're not with me, then you're against me. So I just want to commit that I can disagree with someone on an issue, but still respect them and still be their friend. So if I get on council, I believe it's my responsibility to work with everyone. I will vigorously debate, bring my own unique perspective, and that helps bring the best solution to any issues that we face. So my name's Nick Dyer, just really excited to be here. Thanks.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming into the chamber. I'm Pat Moore, or Patricia Moore. I am the only candidate who lives in the old historic Westminster. We have not had representation in the southern part of the city for over 10 years. A lot of our neighbors feel that they are not being heard on city council. They want more improvement. They are concerned in regard to the housing projects that are going up in Westminster. I am for affordable housing and for low-income housing, but not for compact high density. And I believe that we should start looking at different ways and thinking outside of the box to have some of our residents not rent, but own their own property. And again, I'd like to ask for your support and to vote for me for City Council. Thank you for coming this morning.
Thank you, candidates. For the benefit of the audience, we did ask for input on questions in advance for about nearly 2 weeks by text message, by email, submission, through our social media. All these questions were pre-sent to the chamber. If we do have time to take up audience questions, you'll see question cards in the back of the room that you can grab and take with a pen. You can also provide that to me for us to consider for our next forum on Saturday the 12th. There are 2 types of questions that we'll be asking the candidates and they are well aware of what these types of questions are. So when I start with the question, we'll start on one end and we'll give an opportunity to the other candidates to answer that same question. So we'll start with you, Pat. This first question is a 60-second question. What do you hope to accomplish as a city council member?
Sorry. My accomplishment is to represent the lower section of Westminster. We have concerns in regards to property that's being bought, that was bought over off of 84th and Federal. We have concerns on how that's going to be developed. We also have a lot of concerns from the seniors in regards to the water rates. You know, we used to have to think that seniors used to have to choose between food and medication. Now it's water, medication, and food. So those are some of the things that I hope to work on while on City Council. Those are most important to that part of Westminster, as well as working for the rest of Westminster as well, and taking consideration and listening to our residents who at this time feel that they are not being listened to.
Nick?
All right, what I would like to accomplish, so ultimately, of course, it's going to be I want to speak for the city. I want to make the right decisions that positively impact Westminster. Some of those specifics are going to be, I'm sure we're going to hear a lot of it, is figuring out the best solution to lower our water rates. This inclining block system, I have not heard a good argument for, so I would like to figure out a solution for that. Of course, how we're going to develop or how we're going to navigate our growth and development through the city. I'm not against development, but I would like to see smart growth. I want us to be set up and not rush through growth and development, but I want us to really think about it and see, all right, is this best for our city? And then, of course, I want to protect and continue to maintain our parks and open spaces. Thanks.
As our campaign slogan says, I want to be your voice on City Council. I think we've had a deaf ear to parts of our city, and I think it's important that we represent all of our cities, a part of our city. We need to prioritize our budget on critical issues first before we add new departments to the city at a cost of $1.9 million. I think we have to protect our open space because that's an incredible gem that this city has been able to develop over the many years. I think it's absolutely critical that we look at making sure that when our citizens dial 911, they get the absolute best, well-trained and equipped police and fire to respond to them. And I also think it's important that we look at our mission of being urbanized. That absolutely hits a note with all of our citizens as we're going door to door. These are issues that can be boiled down into protection first, streets, fire, water, police.
So I hope to accomplish for the City of Westminster is to continue to make Westminster a thriving city with a strong local economy and strong support of our local businesses. I want to also work for attainable housing for both seniors and families especially, and also want to make sure that we're preserving our sense of community and the things that we all love about our neighborhoods in Westminster. I also want to work for our environment with working to protect our clean air and water, working to protect and expand our parks and open spaces, and also to work on climate action on a local level. Lastly, I really want to make sure that all residents are engaged and feel empowered to be part of local government. I want to make sure everyone feels comfortable walking into City Hall and having their voice heard as part of our process. Thank you.
Well, I would like to serve the people of Westminster, the people that live here, and I don't think that's going on right now. I think we have been seduced by winning awards. We want to win awards. I think we've been seduced by really developers coming in and saying wonderful things and sowing wonderful visions, all to get money from us, taxpayer money from us. We've forgotten who we work for. We work for the people, and we're supposed to be making Westminster a beautiful, safe, convenient suburb to live in. And we forgot that. As I was saying earlier, when I drove here, I live way up north in Maine, if you look at the Westminster as it was the United States. As I drove down, I saw green, wonderful neighborhoods, Huntington Trails, and the Ranch, and Country Club. And when I got to 92nd, it was like I was in a different city.
So thank you for the question. I want to complete the strategic plan vision that we set forth for the city. So that's having an inclusive community that offers a high quality of life to all residents, regardless of zip code. I want to see strong schools. I want everyone to know that they're welcome and safe in our community. So I believe in investing in our community, even when it's a hard choice. Water infrastructure is a core service. Making sure everybody has access to safe, dependable water, I think, is the core function of government. Supporting our police officers, I think, is important, and it's something we've done. I want to continue to do. And making sure that when we see development, we're only accepting development that enhances the quality of life for our residents, that doesn't negatively impact us, is essential. I believe I have the experience and the leadership to allow us to continue on the path that our strategic plan has outlined that will make us have a strong, vibrant community now and in the future.
First and foremost, I'm looking to represent you, the residents, and I want to add a new perspective. I want to add balanced dialogue that we have not seen from our council in the years past. And I want to make sure that we are focusing on our core services. The reason for a city is to serve the people in the core services, as I mentioned, the public safety, water, or streets. And I don't believe that we're doing that. I believe that we need to prioritize your dollars, and I want to make sure that we are being accountable to you and also transparent in the way that we're making these decisions. I want to preserve our public open spaces. It's near and dear to my heart and my family, and reduce costs to you whenever possible, and approach development in a reasoned way. And making sure that we are following a plan and not going outside the plan. That's what I hope to accomplish when I get on council.
Good morning again. In a recent survey of Westminster citizens, 9 out of 10 said this is a wonderful place to live. And I think we all have the passion to preserve this as a wonderful place to live. What does that mean? Certainly our citizens are concerned with public safety. They're concerned with open space. They're concerned with growth and development and the density of that. They're concerned about transportation and making it efficient and effective. All those issues need to be addressed, certainly by City Council. But let me also say that I'm one person. And in the City Council, it's a democracy, and we welcome diverse opinions, and we welcome the opportunity to have those discussions so we truly can make the best decision for the citizens of Westminster. And that's what I hope to bring, as a balanced opportunity for those views to be heard and for collaboration to exist. Thank you.
Thank you. This next question will start with you, candidate Heaney. And this question is a 60-second. The city's plan and design guidelines need to be updated regarding our outdoor business signage. What would you suggest?
I'm sorry, you said your outdoor business
Signage.
Replace.
Mm-hmm. The city's plan and design guidelines need to be updated regarding outdoor business signage. What would you suggest?
Good question. I know there's been some discussions about outdoor signage. I unfortunately haven't been part of that discussion because I didn't sit on City Council when those code discussions were occurring. But I think, you know, as I look at Westminster, I think we need to be sure they're appropriate to the landscape of our community. Certainly I don't see us flashing lights and neons going on like Las Vegas. I think that would be certainly inappropriate, but I do think that there's an opportunity for us to have signage that announces events, announces things that are going on in the city. So I think you have to look at a balance as to what the city needs and what does that add to or take away from the landscape of the community.
I believe that the sign code should be balanced across the city. I know that in September of 2018, we had a small business, Los Arcos, come to council and request digital signage for their small business to make sure that they're able to let people know that they're there. but I believe that we need to make sure that it's consistent across the board, not just for downtown, not just for certain businesses. So I would accomplish making sure that we look at the bigger picture and make sure that we include small businesses in the mix of our sign code, and make sure that when we do surveys for asking for feedback from residents and business members, that we actually do something with it and that we actually make a change.
So I can happily say that I helped put into the strategic plan for the city that we needed to update our sign code for small and large businesses. It was out of date, and we never want to be the barrier to a thriving economy. So that is something that is actively being worked on right now. There is even a meeting, I believe, October 21st, talking about the codes here in Westminster and updating them. Obviously, there's a spectrum. We need to make sure we're not going to be Las Vegas, but there's a lot of room in between what our current rules are and that. So what we need to do is make sure that these are reasonable, again, enhance the quality of life for our residents, and that we're not creating a barrier for a thriving local economy. I will tell you that I believe the city has done a good job, especially with the Westminster Chamber of Commerce, who was an incredible advocate for this, listening and taking that feedback seriously. That's why it ended up in the strategic plan, and that's why we're working on it now.
Really, when I was elected up to council in 2013, we talked about the need for an updated sign code. It's been a carrot dangled before the business people for 6 years, and that's just not right. And when I'm on council, I will work to change that.
So first and foremost, I do believe we need to get the sign code in place, because I have also heard from business owners that it has taken a long time. So first of all, I think would like to make sure that that does get put in place. But I also do believe we need to work to make sure that our businesses are able to advertise who they are and where they are. So I think we do need to balance, and we've probably gone too far the other way, but allowing businesses to be able to have signs that really show the public where they are, while at the same time fitting into the way we want our city to look and feel for people driving about. So I think it is a balance, but I think we definitely need to get that sign code in place and make sure that businesses feel that it's serving their needs as business owners.
This is a subject near and dear to my heart as a business owner. We have an archaic sign code, and I'm glad that it's been finally taken up. But if you are a business in Westminster and border any one of our neighbors, you are lost in a desert. You cannot be found. Businesses that cannot be seen are businesses that go out of business. We need to adapt low LED sign codes so that we can be seen. It won't be Las Vegas. Here's the other thing about signs. If you're a business and you have an absolutely gaudy sign with a high flash rate, you are going to drive customers away. The public determines the market. We have to get out of the market's way and let it develop what it needs. We do need carve-outs. There's parts of our city that may have great mural opportunities to showcase the historic part of their city, but we can't have carve-outs for the new downtown that are dramatically different for the rest of the city.
All right, I'm going to echo just about what everyone else has said, where obviously, yes, something does need to be done. To me, it's going to be a very common sense approach. You know, if something just doesn't sit right in your stomach looking at a sign, then it's going to be very obvious that, all right, this shouldn't be allowed. But we do have to balance the best interests of the business with their marketing and what's going to be reasonable for just driving through Westminster. Thanks.
We need to have a sign balance. We also need to have a uniform signage code as well, but also in regards to inspecting those. I have a business down in Old Westminster that someone came from the city and said, "You have a beautiful wall. Why don't you put a mural up?" And so the gentleman got together out of his own pocket. He put together a mural and showed it to the city. The city brought it back to him and said, "No, you can't put this up because this is considered advertising." Well, the city came to him and he put out the money to have it drawn up and how much it was going to cost just to throw that money away. So here we are again, is we have someone from the city telling the business owner one thing, and yet the inspector is telling them, no, you can't do it. So we need to mesh those two together so the left hand knows what the right hand is doing, and it's not causing difficulty and spending more money for the business owner.
Thank you, Pat. We'll start with you on this question. This is a rapid fire 30-second answer. What do you think of when you hear the word growth?
At this point in time with the city, high compact density, not acceptable. That's it.
All right, when I hear growth, the first thing that comes to my mind is excitement. That's not always the case. I believe, again, we have to be smart with our growth and development. We almost have to ask the question, what's this going to bring that we don't already have? So if the answer to that question isn't excitement, then it's not the best growth.
Balanced thought for me is, first, as a business owner, it's opportunity for more clients, it's opportunity for the city for more revenue. But what our residents are saying is they're afraid, and they're very afraid, because our mission is urban center. And I think we need to change that dialogue to reflect the wants and needs of our citizens.
When I hear the word growth, I think about the need to be strategic and smart about our growth. We need to think about our water resources, traffic, congestion, infrastructure, public safety. But I also think of it as there is opportunity there. There's opportunity to continue to have a thriving and strong and resilient city. So I think we just need to be smart and careful about growth and make sure we're doing it the right way.
Well, it all depends on what and who is growing. If you are a 2-year-old human being, growth in physical size is a wonderful thing. If you are a 60-year-old person, growth could really bring you the chance of cancer, and we don't want that kind of growth. So it all depends on who you are and where you are, and do it. And this council has made very poor decisions on growth.
I think growth brings both opportunity and challenges, and then it's our responsibility to lead through those challenges, to make sure that growth enhances the quality of life for our residents, brings us great amenities, jobs, restaurants, and shops. This city gets 70% of our general fund from sales tax, so we need to make sure that we have the retail offerings that our residents want. We also need to make sure we have the water resources and the capacity to serve the growth. And so that's where real leadership thought comes in. Thank you.
When I think of growth, I think it's good for our tax base, but we need to have it balanced with what residents want and with their input. And asking questions such as, do we have enough water for growth? And are we being strategic in who we're bringing into the city? And are we rubber stamping everything that moves through? So I think that growth needs to be strategic, smart, and responsible.
I think of growth, and I think of thoughtful kinds of decisions that need to be made about our community. Growth also represents young people coming into our community. It also represents my children being able to live in this community. So it means affordable housing, attainable housing. It means public safety. It means transportation. All those things need to be part of a decision that this council is making.
Thank you. Candidate Heaney, we'll start with you on this question. It's a 60-second. The city has struggled with overuse, as has been seen with our major water sources. What do you plan to do to proactively investigate issues as opposed to being placed in situations where you must make an impulse decision?
I think the information about water, a lot of people in our community don't have the facts about what's going on. And the recent raises went up as the average in terms of water raises was 10% for water, 16% for sewer. And as I asked that question of city staff about what was happening with the water and why we had to make the decisions we were making, I found out that in the past we had not raised our taxes, and we're doing it every 2 years. Well, obviously, that didn't allow us to keep up with the needs that we had in terms of treatment facilities and sewer facilities. So, I think people need to understand the facts, and we need to be sure that we provide the water that's necessary for the future. And the only way to do that is continuing to protect that water, whether it's Stanley Lake or other places.
Could you repeat the question?
The city has struggled with overuse, as has been seen with our major water resources. What do you plan to proactively investigate? Let me reread that. The city has struggled with overuse, as has been seen with our major water sources. What do you plan to do to proactively investigate issues as opposed to being placed in situations where you must make an impulse decision?
Thank you. Well, I'm very logical and strategic in how I think, not just in my personal life, but just in everything that I do. So making sure that I'm asking questions. I work for the Regional Transportation District, and I am staff. So I know what it's like to have a critical council or board asking you the hard questions. And so with that balance and understanding the balance of making hard decisions, I will ask those questions. I take notes. I have notes from 2018 and 2017 when I ran, and I take everything down and look back and make sure that we are consistent in making sure that we have enough water, making sure that we are being strategic and thoughtful in how we approach the water infrastructure. Water infrastructure doesn't just age to 50. We need to take care of it.
So thank you. I guess I disagree slightly with the question. Westminster is not just seen in the state of Colorado, but it's seen nationally as a leader in land use planning and water resource planning and the integration of the two. And in fact, it's something that every time we've had a comp plan change, this council has asked, what are the impacts on water resources? So it's something we're acutely aware of, and that we also make hard decisions and invest in. The recent water rate increase was not due to growth, but rather age and condition of our system. When I got in council, water rate increases were being done based off of the consumer price index that had nothing to do with the actual age and condition of our system or the cost of maintaining it. We did a study and found that a third of our system was beyond its useful life. There were previous councils who had good intentions, but the can got kicked down to us. We had to make a hard decision that we are all sharing in to invest in our city, and I'm proud of that.
Where's Bob Briggs when you need him? Some institutional memory. The question, I think, is the wrong question. There's not water overuse in this city. Does not exist. As far as being proactive, previous councils were absolutely proactive. I remember voting for water rate increases in 2014 and 2015, which staff told us were above the CPI because we were supposed to be saving money for all the projects we had in advance. That seems to be lost from the conversation now. We've always had enough water. What's going on now is this council wants to take water from current users to give to new users that were never envisioned or planned for.
Thank you. So I believe that water is one of our most, if not our most valuable resources here in Westminster, and that we need to be always forward thinking as we're thinking about water and water use, and also working towards water conservation going into the future. So I think that me personally, for the second part of the question of, I would never, I would see that as an impulse decision. This is a decision that requires careful planning that we have in place for our city to look at how we build out, how we use our water, how we prepare for an aging infrastructure, and what is necessary to do to keep our water safe and available for going forward into the future. So I think this is a really important issue. Water is super, super important, and it is always going to be at the foremost of every decision and require deep thought and research to make sure that we have the best answers going forward.
Water is life. There is no question about that. Water must be clean, it must flow the right direction, and its byproducts must flow downhill efficiently too. And I've been in the basement of the Semper water treatment facility and was there when I was in high school, which I want to not say how long ago that was, to do a project. So it does need updating. We need to protect our infrastructure. But we talk a lot about on council generational equity and how we use bonds to pass equity cost along many generations. We can't, though, use our second-tier water rates that were an increase of 38%. If you look at the numbers, that's the flat increase. We can't dump that all on our current residents at one time. We had a comp plan in 2013 that we had enough water for. We've made consistent changes after changes to that plan.
So this reminds me, when I was studying for my private pilot's license, my instructor would tell me, don't let your mind go, or don't let the plane go anywhere that your mind hasn't been at least 10 minutes in advance. So this means that we have to continually ask this question of what does use look like today, what does use look like this week, this month, this year, and it's something that we have to continually evaluate to help make us that best decision throughout the future.
Well, I'm not one for making impulse decisions. I would rather sit down and look at the pros and the cons of a situation. At this point, we're sitting and we've raised the water rates. And again, this now comes back to planning and to growth. If we are not finished with the building of downtown, the new downtown Westminster, and now we are looking at building 3,200 homes over off of 84th and Federal, so where is the water situation going to help the two? And is that going to, again, how much longer are the rate increases going to be put on the residents of the city of Westminster? If you don't have the infrastructure now, how are you going to have it if you're going to be building 32 more hundred homes and you still have the downtown to finish? So again, we're back to planning and we're back to the concentration on growth. And so I think that we need to look not only, thank you.
Thank you. The next question is a 60-second. If you are not elected, what would you do to help work on ideas or issues that are important to you?
One more time.
If you are not elected, what would you do to try to help work on ideas or issues that are important to you?
If I'm not elected, for me at this point in time, I am extremely in favor of wards, and that is something that I would work very diligent for. We have parts of the city that are not being represented, and I think that needs to be changed. City Council had the opportunity to fill vacancies for different parts of the city that didn't have representation and didn't do that. So now we're back to the lower historic Westminster that has no representation, and our residents are not happy. City Council is not listening to us. We have deep concerns, and so I would work very diligently for a charter change and for wards in the lower part, in the city of Westminster. Thank you.
So you have to show up to make a difference. And whether you sit on city council or whether you're just a resident, you can make just as much of a difference, just as much of an impact in the city. So what happens here in these chambers greatly affects me and my family a lot more than what happens, let's say, in the White House, because this is our day-to-day. This is where we all live. So just being involved, whether that's, coming to meetings, talking to counselors. I mean, it's just that involvement that needs to happen. Thanks.
If I'm not elected, I'll continue to do what I've done for the last 4 years. I will be engaged in our city. I will continue to serve on volunteer boards and commissions. I'll continue to serve as a trustee for the Westminster Historical Society, and I'll help out at the high school and elementary schools. You can't just show up every couple of years and say, I'm going to run for city council. That's a disservice to your neighbors. So being a good neighbor, a connected neighbor, someone who's involved and loves this city, you don't just change from election to election. So I'll continue to be the Rich Seymour that my neighbors know.
If not elected, I'd like to return to some of the activities I was doing prior to being on council. I was on the Environmental Advisory Board, so I'd like to continue to work to protect our environment in Westminster. I also did a lot of projects in our open space for restoration, so I am sort of missing being outdoors sometimes, so I would get more outdoors and do volunteer work there. I also sit on the American Academy of Pediatrics Legislative branch for the state of Colorado and advocating for children on the state level. So I would like to continue to advocate for children's health on the state level. And lastly, I'm a proud band mom of a Legacy High School student, but I have been a bad band mom this fall. So I would like to start cooking for the band again and being a better band mom.
Well, I will really continue to talk, with my neighbors and our homeowners associations. I will really continue to send emails to council. I will continue to show up occasionally at council. I will really continue to write letters to the editor of the newspapers and maybe even be on TV.
I was raised to believe it's not just our right to be involved in the community, but it's our responsibility. And so my entire adult life, I have tried to give back every way I can. Currently, I serve on the Ralston House Board. I would want to continue to do that. I have been a president of a climate action group. I would want to continue to be involved in that area. I'm on the American Planning Association board, trying to train planning commissions and citizens as to how to best get involved in understanding land use in their community. I would definitely want to continue to do that. I would also want to stay involved in the city of Westminster, but I would commit to you that I would do it in a positive and collaborative way. I don't think it's helpful to the community for people to throw bombs. I think it's really helpful to meet, to listen, and to explain when you have a concern in a way that is helpful and builds the city up. And so that's my commitment to you. And thank you for that bummer of a question.
Thank you for the question, and I think we can all agree that we would stay involved in our city, the city that we love. I agree, the charter change needs to happen, needs to get on the ballot for our Westminster residents to have their voice be truly heard. I will continue to apply for boards and commissions. I haven't yet had the opportunity to get on and serve on a commission, so I'm looking forward to that if I'm not elected. But I would also like to continue being a stronger member of the Westminster Chamber and then a stronger volunteer member for the court-appointed special advocate. I just finished up a recent case, a successful case, so I'm putting more kids on hold until the first of the year until we can figure out if I have the opportunity to be more involved with them. But I would love to get my feet more into CASA. So thank you.
Well, I think after I wipe my tears and get a little bit more sleep, and then thank those people that have supported me, I certainly would continue to be involved in my community. I'm an advocate for mental health. I serve on the Community Reach Board. I will continue to serve on that. I've been on the Park and Rec Board. I've been on the Inclusivity Task Force. I think, and I would agree with my colleagues here, that you would continue to be. I think that's what you do. You continue to be involved with your city. And my other part is education, and I certainly would want to continue to work with our school districts locally to see what we can do to offer more opportunities for our kids.
Thank you. The next question, it's actually funny that this one's right after that, but 30 seconds, rapid fire. One word that describes Westminster.
Community.
Bold.
Beautiful.
Really winning.
People.
Neighbors.
Spectacular.
Concerned.
Thank you. The next question is 60 seconds. There has been a lot of controversy about the role of incentives in development. What role should taxpayer money play to support private sector development that is in line with our larger goals, assuming these developments cannot be achieved otherwise?
I'm not in favor of incentives. I think that it's the city's job to bring development in, but I don't think that the city should give the farm away so that we bring them in to develop. Especially like some of the things that were done for the St. Mark's, the 27 different things that were given away. So I would have to sit and say that I would be very diligent in what the city is willing to give away to bring in housing. I don't think it should be brought in at the expense of the taxpayer for the city, just because we need to have a tax base revenue coming in.
So businesses should want to come to Westminster because of all the spectacular things we offer, not because Westminster offers the best incentives for big business. I haven't dove deep into this of researching, what has been given, but I do know that it is an issue, and it just doesn't feel right to me. It doesn't seem like we should have to offer that.
If I had my druthers, we'd not give another dime to a developer that had more money than the rest of our entire state. But we have to look at the reality of the marketplace too, and I am a market-driven individual. Up and down the 36 corridor, there are cities giving incentives for businesses to come here. We have to look at the return on the investment on that, though. What kind of primary jobs will that business bring, and or will they bring retail tax dollars to our city? Those are the key questions that you have to answer. What we can't do on the other side is we can't give one of the biggest developers of projects in revitalizing old sites in the country an extra $1 million for closing costs. We have to avoid that kind of incentive, because if we had the right project at the old mall site with the right person, we wouldn't have to give $1 million away at the end.
I believe private sector development incentives need to be looked at very judiciously. I think that they do play a role for allowing a catalyst for areas of development in areas of our city that may be struggling, or where we're trying to accomplish something a little different and innovative in our city. But I also agree with Rich that we do need to look at the return of investments always on those incentives, and they should always be paying for themselves in the long run. I also would like to see us be giving some more incentives to small businesses, and particularly looking at businesses not just in the actual revenue dollar amount that they're bringing to our city, but also the social capital that they're bringing to our city, the diversity, and the other community feeling that they're bringing to our city, not just strict dollar cents.
Well, I am absolutely against incentives to businesses. And generally, they're to enormous businesses. They're not to little businesses. They're to enormous businesses. And the reason I'm against it is because it doesn't help us. All it's done is raise the expectation of businesses, because everyone else in the Front Range wants to give incentives. So we're in a bidding war that we can't possibly win. It's impossible. So how about this? Instead of the centralized government planning, let's have a free market. And let's have businesses choose to go where they think is best, because we're not going to win the bidding war, and it's time we get out of that bidding war. An example would be the apartment complex built next to the Westin Hotel. We gave them a $4 million waiver of fees they should have paid. For what? Nothing.
So thank you for this question, and I think it's important and it's a complex. I think everyone wants to make sure that business pays their fair share when they're going to invest in our community. And so I also believe, as someone who, I have a master's in business and have spent my entire professional life in the business community, I feel the best way to incent employers and businesses to come into your community is to be the type of community their employees want to live in. So if you have strong schools, great parks, wonderful open spaces, you've gotten more than halfway there. But the truth of the matter is we have to recognize the landscape that we're operating in. And incentives are oftentimes that icing on the cake that does make a difference. At our downtown that's been referenced, we've seen success by incentivizing some of the first in. We now have over, just under rather, $300 million of private investment. And we have some wonderful businesses like the Alamo Draft House and the Tattered Cover coming. There are parts of our city that have not seen investment. We need to push the market there. Thank you.
Well, it's definitely a balance. And you know, I look at this as we have a budget in place. It's supposed to be balanced every year. Personally, I have a budget and I don't go outside that because it's not smart, it's not strategic. So if we're, and then excuse me if I'm wrong, but in my notes I have $4 million incentive to build apartments by the Westin, $2 million for the spaghetti factory, and $500,000 for the Alamo. If we keep giving incentives such as the high dollars like that, how are we going to obtain and be sustainable? We talk about being sustainable for our future. How are we going to sustain our budget if we keep giving high dollar incentives? It is across the market. The market should be driving what we should be seeing in our city to be vibrant, to be resilient, and make sure that we are making sure that we are providing for residents now and making sure that we can be inclusive to our business community as well.
Well, most of everything has been said, but let me say every time you take a look at development, you have to measure what is the benefit to the city, what is the benefit to our citizens. And I agree with Anita, we have a city that certainly developers want to come and build in. And it's the price, unfortunately, of oftentimes doing business to be able to offer those incentives to the right places and the right businesses to come into our community. So I think, again, it's not an impulse, it's strategic. It's something that you study, and you need to be sure it's to benefit the citizens and the city, both.
Thank you. This next question is 60 seconds. When the council is faced with a decision, it often wants resident feedback, but generally defaults to existing staff decision or discussion held prior to any council meeting. This discourages public input. How do you foresee yourself handling things differently?
Well, citizen input, I think, is crucial to the decisions that we're making as a council. But I also believe that people shouldn't have to just come to city council to have their voices heard. So I would like to see city council reach out to all HOAs to be available to have those discussions. And that's really where I would begin. I think that transparency is extremely important, and many people don't have the time or the willingness to come in front and stand at a podium. That's really scary for a lot of people. So how do we make city council accessible to those individuals who would be reluctant to come forward? And I think we go to them.
Thank you. And you know, I struggle with this one because communication is key with our city, and it's been lacking with residents and getting that feedback. I mean, we could go back all the way to the moratorium that was placed last year, and making sure that we're accurately divulging information to residents on the reasons why 1/3 of our infrastructure for water didn't just become aged out of our system and become old. We need to make sure that we are taking things into account of timelines. I know that we need to make sure that that we reach out for input as a concerned community member. I've been door knocking and understand concerns, and this is why the award system might be appropriate for getting on the ballot for a charter change, because it's you, the residents, that tell us what you hear, what you feel, and what you see in your neighborhoods.
So this is the whole reason we have this form of government, isn't it? Is to balance the quantitative, the data-driven information that we get from our city staff, the absolute experts in the field, and balance that with the qualitative feel of our residents. How does this impact them? And for us to make that balance and make a decision that values both at the right degrees. And we really try hard, recognizing that is our responsibility. Oftentimes, people confuse the loudest voices with the most voices. A recent example of that was the St. Mark's vote. We've heard over and over that we didn't listen to residents, but actually, if you go to the city clerk and you look at how many people spoke in favor and against, there were more who were in favor of that project. It is not always the loudest who represent the majority. It is very difficult on city council, but what we have to do is make the best decisions for our community today, tomorrow, and into the future.
Well, I think the best thing we can do is to interact with people. This whole thing about people having an input, that's not the way it works in real life. Okay? Generally, when we have a public hearing for council, it's like people coming up and begging. There's no interaction. There's no response. And it doesn't make any difference because the decision's already been made. I mean, the council up here too many times has just been a show. I mean, a kabuki show. And that's not decision making. So if we're going to live up to our value, we need to find a different way to interact back and forth with the people affected by a decision.
So I think that there's always room for improvement, and this is always a difficult to how really to feel like we're getting the voice of the people, which is what I think I hear everyone up here saying they want to be able to represent the people. One thing is involving all people, all involved people early. I think that's sometimes where things get a little lost, is either we don't get the message out early, or by the time things get moving along is when people kind of get attuned to it and start jumping in. I also really want to make sure we're really reaching out to different communities to make sure that we are listening to the voices of all the different communities in Westminster. There's a lot of different people in Westminster, and I want to make sure all those communities are being heard. Lastly, we just have to be creative and innovative. There's so many modalities. Some people want TV, some people want mail, some people want social media, some people want the internet. There's so many different ways. I recently just sent an email to,
This is a key issue, and sometimes old can be new. We had a corny thing that used to happen in the city. It was called We're All Ears. Council members would go to community events and just be there to listen. No agenda, no sitting 10 people around a table and have a moderated discussion. It was just listening to our residents. Any topic was open. We got away from that. I understand it's a big city and there's a lot of people in varied discussions, but I think that's one type of issue that we can come back to instead of tightly scripted community meetings. The last one up at Noah's was a great step in the right direction. The other side of that is when we're listening, we have to listen with a more diverse ear, and we don't have that on our council. When we had 3 openings, we did not do the primary thing that is important to government, and that is consent of the governed. We had a second from a counselor or a motion to study the issue, and it wasn't even seconded.
So I'd like to eliminate any roadblock that someone might have from voicing their opinion. So a lot of what everyone else has said, I think, is a great start to that. In this modern day and age, we have just a crazy amount of resources available to help start facilitating that communication both back and forth from the residents and the city council. So I think it's just something that we need to start taking advantage of everything that we have available to us.
We need to improve our communication with our residents. As I'm going door to door as well, we have a lot of seniors in the historic Westminster who sit and say, I'm not going up to city council at 7 o'clock at night. It takes me forever to get from the parking lot to the front door. My suggestion is that we have more meetings down at the libraries where it's very well lit. It's not such a long distance for our seniors to go. And during the day, not at night. Our seniors don't want to be at night. Number one, they're afraid they're going to fall. I mean, even I do. And so we don't want a broken hip. But they still want to be part of the conversation. They still have a lot of concerns. We should be going out on a monthly or weekly, not only with city council members, but with the staff that is making the plans for such as the water. So we should have the water department there so they're able to explain to the resident exactly what's going on. Thank you.
Running low on time, so closing statements will be 1 minute. We'll start with you, Pat, and then we'll conclude with candidate Heaney.
I did not take running for city council lightly. I had a lot of my neighbors who came and said, Pat, we know you, no offense, but I have the mouth. And so I'm vocal. I'm not going to sit and just say yes, yes, yes. I need to have data. I need to have pros and cons. I need to know exactly what city council is looking to do for our residents. The southern part of Westminster is not being represented, and they have grave concerns, and they want to see some action down there as far as representation. And that's not saying that I'm going to forget about the rest of the city. That would be foolish. We need to work together so that the city accomplishes their goals. I am for affordable housing and low-income housing, but I believe in ownership. It gives them, a resident, more input into the city, more respect for the city, more caring for the city, and more apt to agree with city council. A renter just goes whenever. Thank you.
So I am a Colorado native. My wife and I, we moved here to Westminster about 3 years ago. I grew up in Arvada, just down the street, so north Arvada. So even though I've only been here 3 years, I know Westminster history. I've seen it 28 years developed. I missed the little hot air balloons in the old Westminster Mall. So please don't equate me only living in the city for 3 years that I would care for this city any less than anyone else up here or any less than any of you out there in the audience too. At the end of the day, I want to help improve the quality of life for all of our Westminster residents. Thank you.
I think we have a great opportunity for change, and I think we can look at change in two different ways. Can we work together? Can we find 4 people on council, 5 people on council, 6 people, 7 people on council that can work as a consensus to find the big issues? I think all too often on council, we get 4 votes and we move ahead. That's not diversity of opinion. I think on some of our big decisions, we ought to have the ability to step back and say, you know what? We need to keep talking about this because we don't have all the information. And it doesn't have to be done tomorrow. Most of our decisions don't have to be done tomorrow. Council is a strategic body and needs to look ahead. When we develop our new comp plan, it has to be the right plan. When we have our new sign code finally, it has to be the right sign code. But it has to be right, and we need to see that for all points of view. We don't have that right now. If you look at the votes that we get, most of them are 6-1. We need to change that. Thank you.
Thank you again for coming this morning. I love this city and I love the people of Westminster. I'm running to help make Westminster a healthy city where all residents have a sense of well-being. I'm proud of our history. I'm also proud of the direction that we are heading. It has been an honor to serve the people of Westminster, and I would look forward to continuing to serve them. This is the city where I've been where I've worked my adult life and where I've raised my family. And I am truly honored to be serving all of you. Thank you.
It's absolutely important to vote. And please ask all your neighbors to vote. And please ask that enormous section of our voters that don't vote when it comes to city elections. They vote in presidential elections, they vote in governor elections, but they don't vote in cities elections. And yet this is the election that affects every one of us the most. And we do need to be a unified city. I think Rich was absolutely correct in that appeal. But the first thing we have to do is share the things we all own in common. Every person in this city owns water and should have a fair and equal access to it. But as a drive around the city will show, the middle and southern parts of this city are being deprived of that water in the most crude economic manner you can imagine, by price. Take it from them. And I'll tell you, the people in all of our city are proud of their neighborhoods. How many brown lawns will it take?
I am excited to run for re-election to Westminster City Council. When my husband and I chose Westminster to be the city that we wanted to live in, that we wanted to have and raise our kids in, it was because we found an exceptional quality of life here. We found friendly residents and amazing open spaces and parks. I am working because I want to make sure when my children are grown, they still have that access to a high quality of life. Every decision that we make makes that future more or less possible. I'm committed to work with you to make an inclusive Westminster, one that focuses on the ability of all residents to have access to that quality of life, that protects our open spaces, our environment, our air, and our water. We need to invest in our city, in our streets, in our police force, in our fire department. I've shown that I have the ability to do that. I've also led with ethics and integrity, making sure that I never make attacks personal, but only disagree on policy. I think that's the type of civility our residents deserve.
You, the residents, have the ability to make a better change for our community. And if you want to continue to see water rate increases and those that are elected move on to higher positions and not serving you on your council that you elected them to serve, and then lack of oversight in our infrastructure, we can continue with the status quo. But if you're looking for something different and looking for a positive change, a person that will add logical, smart, strategic dialogue, elect me, Lindsay Smith, to represent you and your voice in our community. I am committed to serving you for the next 4 years, and I will do my absolute best to make sure that your concerns and your vision and your voice is heard on council. I know we didn't get to talk about all of the issues today and what's important, so if you could just go to my website, electlindsaysmith.com, for more information about myself, that would be great. But I ask for your vote in November, and thank you so much for your time here today.
You know, oftentimes politicians have a negative thoughts when you think of politicians. And Lindsay was mentioning moving up in a political lifestyle. And let me assure you, that's not my role. I'm here because I really want to support the citizens of Westminster. Westminster is not an island, and certainly we're not going to build a fence around Westminster. We need to look at what is happening across the Front Range. You know, we have issues with homelessness, we have issues with mental health, we have issues with affordable housing, and the only way we're going to resolve those is to collaborate with non-governmental agencies, governmental agencies, and the public. I have the passion to do so. I have a background that brings people together, and I will continue to work for that. So thank you very, very much for coming this up.
Well, thank you all for joining us and taking the time out of your personal lives and dedicating it to this campaign. I know that's taken over a considerable amount of your time, and to see your interest in our city and moving us forward is something that's appreciated by everyone, I know, in the room and ourselves. So thank you for attending our Westminster Chamber of Commerce First Candidate Forum. Please join us on Saturday the 12th at the Grange. Feel free to give a round of applause or connect with the people after. And enjoy the fantastic day. Thank you.